So in the first two sections of the course, we looked at things outside of ourselves and how we know about them. First section was God. How do we know about him, whether or not he exists? Second section, we looked quite generally about what forms the basis or justification for our knowledge of the external world. This second part of the course, and really to the end of the course, we're going to turn the gaze back inward. We're going to focus on ourselves, you, me, and things that distinguish us from ordinary run-of-the-mill things. And the first set of topics are in the area of philosophy that philosophers call the philosophy of mind. And they have to do with two features that you have, that I have, and that we both think are very important. First is consciousness. You're conscious, I'm conscious. I value consciousness, you value consciousness. You would be much happier with it than without it, if I give you a choice. You could be conscious for the rest of your life, or unconscious. Which would you choose? You'd choose to be conscious. But what is consciousness? What is this thing that you value so much? We'll talk about that for the next two sessions, and then in the third session on the philosophy of mind, we'll talk about thought. What is it to be a thinker? What is it to be the kind of thing that thinks? Okay, consciousness. So the word consciousness gets used many different ways by many different people, scientists, philosophers, and the like, everyday laymen. And it means different things in different people's mouths. So in order to ask accurate questions about it, we need to be very precise about what we're talking about. What I want to do here is focus on one thing that all of the things we typically call conscious have in common. And that's what could be roughly called what it's likeness. There's something it's like to be the conscious thing. As a way of illustrating that thought, I'm going to choose an arbitrary thing that claims to be conscious. Damien. Here he is. What's Damien doing? He's focusing on a chessboard. He's playing chess. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to imagine what it's like to be Damien here. So imagine seeing what he's seeing. Imagine smelling what he's smelling. Imagine feeling what he's feeling. Imagine thinking what he's thinking. I'll give you some clue as to what he's thinking. He's thinking about whether to sacrifice his queen. You going to do it? That will lead to a queen sacrifice. Okay, so put yourself in Damien's shoes and imagine being him. Really give it a shot. Okay, if you did that well, you would have perfectly imagined seeing what he was seeing. Let's give you a clue as to how that might have worked. There you are. That gives you some sense of what it's like to see what Damien sees. Ask yourself, did you get it right? Work as a photographer and in art can actually help you do this, can help you imagine what it's like to see from other perspectives. Getting it right in this case would have involved, seeing those two right castles down there before, at the right, and those black castles to the right in front of your eyes. It would have involved seeing the black pieces broadly towards you, seeing the white pieces away. It would have involved seeing that particular arrangement of pieces on the board. And if you did it, you did well. But of course, that wasn't enough. That was a start, but it wasn't enough. Doing more would have involved not just seeing what he saw, but also hearing what he heard, thinking what he thought, feeling what he felt, smelling what he smelled, and so on and so forth. Now, the thing that makes your imaginative activity right or wrong is the way that it is to be Damien, what it's like to be Damien. That's what made you nearer or farther away from being correct in imagining what it was like to be Damien. The better you were at imagining what it was like to be Damien, the closer you were to what it was really like to be Damien. The worse you were, the further away you were from what it was really like to be Damien. Okay, now exit Damien, and let's contrast imagining what it's like to be him with imagining what it's like to be this table. So I'd like to ask you to do that. Imagine what it's like to be the table. Give it your best shot. Really try. Think yourself into the table's position. Can you do it? So I take it that you're just coming up a blank now. Of course, you can imagine yourself having eyes roughly at the sort of level of the table, but the table doesn't have eyes, so that's not imagining what it's like to be the table. You can imagine yourself thinking, ooh, this chessboard is heavy on my back, but that's not imagining what it's like to be the table, because the table isn't having any thoughts. You can imagine yourself feeling the pressure of the chessboard on your back, but that's not what it's like to be the table, because the table doesn't feel anything, it doesn't have any sensations, it's just a table. So, insofar as you're drawing a blank, one way you might express that is by saying, look, I can't imagine what it's like to be the table, because there's nothing it's like to be the table. There's no corrective to my mental activity of imagining. There was nothing. If I imagined it being one way or another way, there's nothing that would make the one thing right and the other thing wrong. Philosophers would take that thought and express it this way. There is nothing it's like to be a table. There's something it's like to be Damien. A general feature of unconscious things that aren't conscious, is that there's nothing it's like to be them. And a general feature of conscious things is that there's something it's like to be them. So I want you to reflect for a moment on that. And in the next clip, and for the rest of this lecture, we're going to look at an argument to the effect that these facts about what it's like to be conscious things are extraordinary, insofar as these facts are the kind of facts that can't be described in the language of science. And so, because you and I are conscious, because there's something it's like to be us, science can't fully describe us in how we are. This is an amazing thesis, and it's a thesis that's been advanced by certain philosophers in the later part of the 20th century.